With the input of thousands of delegates at the recent biennial convention now tallied, the Republican Party of Texas has announced its legislative priorities heading into the legislative session next year. Now, during the convention, the Legislative Priorities Committee narrowed down the priorities presented to 15. Delegates then voted to determine the final 8, and these 8 legislative priorities are meant to serve as directives for lawmakers on what party members would like to see accomplished during the 140-day legislative session beginning in January. Today, we now have those 8 priorities, and we are joined by Republican Party of Texas Chairman Abraham George to discuss those. Abraham, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Now, these legislative priorities, before we get into them, why are these so important? We've heard a lot of people talk about these. These were the center of a lot of political campaigns during the primary elections. Why are they important?
Well, this is when you have the entire state parties, all the delegates, about 9,000 people come together and choose this, right? This is so important that it actually works very well too, that we know that other states like Florida and North Carolina is actually copying our model to talk to their legislators. Without this, our platform is great. The problem with the platform is it's big, so legislators use that as an excuse to get away from doing anything. But with 8 priorities, this is razor sharp, and they're given extremely narrowed directives from the party and saying, okay, you got to go get this done. So I know some of them don't like it because we hear that all the time, but this is the grassroots request and directive to the legislators. So this is wonderful for us. Yeah.
So I want to get right into them, starting with number 1, the one that actually received the most votes. Not really a surprise given what's been happening over the last couple of years in the news, but number 1, border enforcement. Why do you think this issue has been so pervasive?
Well, unfortunately, this was a repeat legislative priority because we talked about it 2 years ago as well. And I got to say, Governor Abbott has done everything he can with the limited resources that was provided by the Texas House. I know Senate was wonderful in this issue, and they passed good bills, and the House just went and watered it down every time. So this has gotten to a point that I know it's not a state issue, but at the same time, we live here. We don't have a choice but to secure our border. And one of the things that I was very interested in this one is ending all subsidies and public services and including in-state institution and public schools for illegal aliens, except for emergency medical care. So this is a huge thing. I mean, this is a strong statement to our legislators to get this done. So I'm expecting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm expecting this to happen. So.
Absolutely, and ending those magnets being a part of that. There are specifics, by the way, I'll say, on each of these points, and you can read those at Texas Scorecard, or you can see them on the Republican Party of Texas websites to see the specifics on all of these planks. The second one, second priority, again, not a surprise that this would be towards the top, secure Texas elections. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, another repeat legislative priority. Can you believe that? So it shouldn't be that big of a task for the legislator. They're very simple things they're asking for. The party is asking one is you have to have a voter ID, a picture ID to come cast a ballot. It is simple things, but again, it goes back to what 2 chambers have done. The House removed the felony, they put it back, and it is a mess. But I'll tell you this. Having the same priority over and over again should tell them something. And good thing is this time around we have a lot of conservatives that's going to be in the Texas House. So I'm hoping they're going to fight for some of these priorities tooth and nail to make sure it actually happens. So yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's a little bit of a theme with some of these because we've got several. In fact, the next priority, stop sexualizing Texas kids. This right is another one that was a legislative priority last time. There was some work done on this issue, but unfortunately, some of that legislation has been blocked in the courts, and advocates for protecting kids say there's a lot more work to do. They just sort of scratch the surface on this.
Yeah, so it's one of the priorities that actually moved forward somewhat, right? I mean, we got something. but the party is not happy with it. We got a lot more work to be done on this, and the court system, yeah. But again, it goes back into actually cleaning up that bill to a point that the courts cannot come after us because it is our right to have not sexualizing our children. It's a simple thing to ask. Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing to me that that's a radical thought to some that we would want to
Yeah.
protect kids in Texas, but I digress. Number four, right in the middle there, and this is a big topic of discussion, is no Democrat chairs. Again, this was a legislative priority last time. Speaker Dade Phelan did not even allow a vote on the issue, but now you actually have a majority of Republican lawmakers saying that they want to see no Democrat chairs in this next session.
Right, and we have two people running against Dade Phelan, and they both have committed that they will not have Democrat chairs. Now the Republican caucus is majority of them, 46 of them have signed on to this letter, and I've been told that there's going to be a few more signing on in the next few weeks. So this is a great start for us. And it is they have been killing our priorities. Whatever some of these legislators keep telling us, it's not true. They've been killing our priorities and our conservative bills for the longest time in Texas House. Yeah.
Number five, the fifth priority here is an interesting one: ban taxpayer-funded lobbying. If I recall, this was actually a legislative priority a few years ago. I think it didn't quite make the cut last time. It's now back there on the list. This is an issue that has been passed a few different times in different versions, I believe, out of the Texas Senate, has been killed repeatedly in the Texas House. Why do you think there's such a disconnect on this issue between voters and those in Austin?
Well, most of the time, it comes back to follow the money thing, right? So a lot of these legislators are getting reelected by these lobby firms, and they are funded by taxpayers during the session. So they're taking money from us through taxes and advocating against us. And unfortunately, that group is so strong. Our legislators are scared of them. Some of them will say rural areas need a lobbyist. My whole thing is, if your city council member or school board member cannot pick up the phone and call their representatives, there's a problem with either one of those groups. So either replace the representative or replace the school board member or the city council member. You don't need a third party to actually lobby for the conservative bills that you need. So this is back, and I'm actually very happy about it, because this is one of my personal pet peeves, that people taking from my money and working against me. Yeah.
Number six, secure the electric grid. This is something we've seen people like Senator Bob Hall, for example, has been a very, very vocal advocate on for years. Now it is on the priorities. There's a lot of people who would love to see Texas relying solely on unreliable energy, wind, solar, from China, etc. There is a big movement out there. Why is it important that Texas fight back against that?
Well, there's two things. One is the economy itself. Texas is a powerhouse. We are the energy capital. So going to wind and solar, and we've all seen this throughout our especially like driving through some of these areas, and you see this windmill standing there doing nothing and spending millions of dollars of taxpayer money into it. Then you had to recycle this whole thing. So and in a state like ours where oil is so abundant, and it's reliable, it's working for us. So I think, and on top of that, I think this is also the grid issue where Senator Bob Hall talks about it, the EMP issues and the GMD issues and all of those stuff. So after going through the couple of years ago, the whole disaster of people even dying, I think it is time the Texas legislature actually put some money behind securing our grid itself and building more energy efficient power plants and oil, gas and oil based productions like that. So yeah, the party is always on the side of this. So I'm glad it actually made into the one of the priorities.
Yes, and another new priority this time, number 7, Texas is not for sale. This is referring to to a ban on foreign entities like China, North Korea, Iran, Russia, but we're really talking about in practicality, China mainly,
Yeah.
buying up Texas land, buying up hundreds of thousands of acres of Texas land. A ban on that passed the Senate last session. It was killed in the Texas House. Do you feel better about its chances heading into 2025?
This is one of the bills that actually killed by Dade Failing himself. So they point of ordered the whole thing and they put it on the committees. That they worked so hard to kill this, and then you will actually wonder why. This is one of the things that you're like, okay, whose side are you on? Are you on the side of Texans and Americans, or are you on the side of China and Russia and North Korea? And then they will give you a little bit. I know we had some of our reps actually meet with some of the communities. There's a lot of misinformation about this specific priority, but at the end of the meeting, they were all okay. We're not the government of China. We're not CCP, so we don't really care about this bill. So the problem is Dade Phelan and his group used it against us and didn't pass this. So I'm actually expecting this to pass this time around because the Texans are outraged by this issue that China and Russia is buying our land, especially farmland in Texas.
Yeah. Last priority here, number 8, end federal overreach. And this is sort of a multifaceted priority. This is talking about, for example, some of the things we've seen as far as roads and transportation that we've seen the federal government putting in these road diets and things like that. But it's also talking about federal vaccine mandates as well.
Yes. So it actually goes back to, I think, in my opinion, it goes back to the constitutional issue where what gives the federal government the authority to come after us on anything, right? So they have a very specific set items that they can tackle in our constitution, and anything outside of that, it left to the states. And this is going back to that, stay out of our lives as much as you can, stay out of our roads, and just keep your government limited, which is one of the founding principles of Republican Party. But they don't seem to do that, especially Biden administration wants, part of everything in our life, from starting from vaccines to everything else. So this is going to be an interesting one. I'm trying to figure out how our legislators will handle this.
Yeah. So now we have the final 8. Those were the 8 legislative priorities. Last thing I want to ask is, as we look towards November and we look towards January, what do you expect the party's going to be doing to help ensure that these legislative priorities have the best chance of success that they can have?
Well, there's 2 things. One, we are already working on, which we're asking Republican representatives to elect a speaker who's going to work on our priorities, who is going to be on the same side as the Texas Senate and the Governor Abbott and the state party. The other is we're going to hold them accountable. So January comes, we will make sure the party is holding every single Republican accountable, and we will give them enough support that they need from the grassroots side to actually pass these priorities. And I make that promise very clear that we will be on your side 100% all day to make sure these priorities get passed. But if you're on the other side working with the Democrats, that's not the case. So we're hoping that we will be able to work with all of them, with the Senate, with the House, and the Abbott governor's office. But again, we'll see how that all plays out. Who is going to be the speaker? That's going to be the main concern this time. Yeah.
Republican Party of Texas Chairman Abraham George, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.